Today we are taking a hot take with the question, is yoga bad? And this is something I've personally wrestled with for quite a few years. I used to do yoga all the time. I loved it. And I actually probably still would love it if I didn't know the origins behind it.
Yeah.
I love to exercise. I'm obsessed with it. I like all kinds of exercise. I like moving my body. I like the idea of physically taking care of myself in that way so I can keep up with my daughter, run after her, and hopefully live a long life, able to move and be flexible, not stiff in my joints, So when I started hearing little chatter that it might not be a good thing, I was annoyed because I thought, why? That's like something that I love to do.
Yeah.
But I know you've, had a lot of thoughts on it too. But for me specifically, what really cinched the deal was listening to an ex-Satanist who was at a church in Eau Claire speaking about yoga and how that was like linked to Satanism. And I thought, wow, that's crazy. And then it made me really think like, okay, maybe I should take a pause on this. And I'm not coming out here to punch anyone in the face, shame anyone if you're involved in yoga. That's not my point. But my point is to hopefully open up the discussion that people at least prayerfully consider and do your own research on where yoga originated from and what you're yoking yourself to when you're doing it, because that's literally the definition of yoga, is to yoke with and be in union with. So I don't want to ramble on forever without hearing something from you too, and what kind of spoke to you. That was what came to me. It was like the ex-Satanist that really kind of cinched it.
Yeah. We had kind of had going back and forth conversations for probably a lot of years, actually, kind of touching on the topic of yoga and is this okay? Is it not? If I'm not thinking about worshiping a different God when I'm in this pose, does it really matter? And so for those of you who haven't looked into it, because a lot of people haven't. I mean, I'm talking to patients all the time. I just talked to one last week who was telling me that I knew she was a Christian. She told me that. And then she said that she enjoys yoga and she was talking about how she needed to get back into it. And I just said, you know what? You told me you're a Christian, so I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Yeah. But I do want to let you know that yoga is very much rooted in Hinduism. Yes. It is truly, it's actually putting yourself in different poses to worship specific Hindu gods. Yeah. And that for me, the Lord convicted me on that and said, why would you do that? If you truly reverence me and honor me, why would you partake in a practice of Hindu god worship? And so I just said, you might want to do some research, looking into it, because I didn't know any of that until I started looking into it, and just see what the Lord tells you. And there's no, I have no condemnation, going your way whatsoever. But if it does speak to your spirit, I just don't want you to do something that you would later say, oh, I wish I would have known that, then I would have done something different.
Totally.
So,
it took me a long time, to get off of it, because I enjoyed it. I loved it. I really did. Truly, absolutely loved it. And
I think that is kind of the argument that I oftentimes hear is, well, if I'm not in my heart worshiping something else, what does it matter? Yeah. And, I was reading a book by John Ramirez, who's an ex-Satanist, and he said, to him, it was like, if I walked up to a Satanist and I told them, I'd like you to make the sign of the cross over yourself. And you don't even have to agree with it, but this will unlock some health benefits to you. Oh, wow. He said there's no way they would do it, because they understand the implication of what they're actually doing with their body when they make the sign of the cross over themselves. Wow. And it is not any different than us doing these positions with our body. knowing that that's what it's rooted in. Wow. And so I had looked at some different websites. This one is called Miss Yoga Fit, and she goes into, are yoga poses meant to worship gods? And she talks about that, yes, that is actually the case, but that her argument is, but it's an individual choice if you want to make it that or not. But she goes into the historical background, and I was like, oh, I just want to even know like these specific positions. And like the tree position is associated with the Hindu god of Vishnu, and the downward facing dog pose is associated with worshiping the god of Shiva. The same as the warrior pose is the same. It's named after the fierce warrior created by the Hindu god Shiva. So when we're aligning ourselves this way, are we opening ourselves up spiritually to things that we do not want to be opening ourselves up to? I think there's so much that goes on that we're kind of unaware of. I think a lot of believers are unaware of the significance of things, even books or different things you might have in your house that are associated with whether it's witchcraft or other things or movies. I mean, these are all like gateways that we open up and allow access into our family, into our home when we have these things.
Here's like a burning question that I have. So like just want to hear your insight on this, but like, how like in the Bible, God had the rainbow for Noah and that was like his promise, and then like the liberal movement, the like homosexuality and stuff like is championing gay pride and all of that. So they've taken that rainbow and they've perverted it. I kind of wonder, like, God made our bodies to move this way. Has this been perverted by idol worship and Hinduism? And because like God made our bodies to be able to stretch in these ways, and has that been perverted then by these people to turn into worship of their gods? Like that's like a genuine question, that I have right now, because I still do like the down dog pose because it's in my stretching classes, even that are not yoga, and Pilates still does those kind of same moves too in some of them. So it's like I have to like consider that. Is that like harmful to do those moves? When it's like God did make our bodies that way, and has it just been perverted by the enemy, and shall we reclaim it for God? Genuine thoughts.
Yeah. Well, one thing that was interesting to me that wasn't always clear was that the rainbow they use is actually different.
Yeah, that's right. It's missing a color.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is different.
Yeah.
And I just think like, I don't think they could use it. You know what I mean? Like you can't take God's rainbow. They had to change it somehow. But I also have wondered some of those things myself. But I think, okay, what am I trying to accomplish? I'm trying to stretch my hamstrings with the downward facing dog, right? So can I do that another way? Yes, I can. And so I try to find other positions in which I can do that. But I think they're all very valid. I think like I said, there's no black and white. Like I don't want to make it come across like that's the case. I also, if I started a church of my own, I can guarantee you it would not have a Christian yoga class. Does that make sense? Like, no, I'm going to draw the line there, and we're not going to have like non-Christian practices that worship other gods going on inside of a place of worship. Like, no, that's not going to happen. And I'm purposefully choosing to not do yoga because I don't want to open myself up to that, and nor do I want to offend my God. Like that's probably the biggest thing for me in my heart, is that I want to live in reverential worship and awe of God and fear of the Lord, and I don't want to offend him in any way. And just like I wouldn't go in for fun, just to experience what it would be like to be in like some kind of Hindu temple, and I'd walk in and throw things down in front of their god idol. I would never do that because you could say, well, what's the harm? I don't really believe in this stuff. Well, it could be very offensive to my God, and I don't want to partake in that at all. So that's how I've viewed it. I would love it if we could somehow create some type of exercise, that has some of those same benefits, but has no involvement with any of those movements that have clearly been like written out as a way to worship specific other gods.
Totally. Yeah. Like when I Googled it, it says that yoga originated in India over 5,000 years ago as a spiritual practice developed by the Indus Sarasvati civilization. The word yoga first appeared in the Rig Veda, an ancient sacred Hindu text written in Sanskrit that is part of the Vedas. The Vedas are a collection of hymns and mantras that date back to around 1500 BCE. So when I read that, and then it also further goes on to say that the sages or rishis refined and developed yoga, documenting their practices and beliefs in the Upanishads, a series of over 2,000 Hindu scriptures. One of the most influential teachers was Patanjali, who wrote the Yoga Sutras around 200 BCE. And then now it has evolved into a complex system of physical, mental, and spiritual practices that are passed down from teacher to student in yogic lore. Shiva is considered the first yogi and guru predating any religion or belief system. So when I read that and see truly where it is rooted in, it helps me because it just shows me when I'm doing that, if I was to continue doing yoga, that's what I would be linking myself to, because that is where it originated. That was its focus. That's what its purpose was idol worship, essentially. So if you're doing that, you think about stuff in the Bible and idol worship, and it's kind of nasty when you think about it in that way. Does this mean I'm going to run and knock someone over if I see them in tree pose at the park? No. But I think that when you look at these hot yoga studios and all these things that are super trendy, super popular right now, I think a lot of people in there, don't even realize that that's where it originated from. Right. A lot of people think it's innocent, it's healthy, all of that stuff. And I think that this is something that we're just asking, that we would hopefully ask you to prayerfully consider, what does this look like in my life? Yeah, I think it's just important to notate. I've had definitely interesting conversations with people over the years, and it's just an interesting thing to think about, to be careful with.
Yeah, I think there's so many different things in our life that, what does the enemy do? He's really good at trying to make sin look attractive and normal.
Yeah.
And we would all say that idol worship, if you're a believer, is a sin.
Yeah.
Right? That's black and white to us, most of us, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to do idol worship.
Yeah.
But what if he snuck in idol worship and called it exercise?
Yeah.
And that it's good for you, and all these things. Yes. That's exactly what the enemy is a master at.
Totally.
And so we're just trying to pull back the veil to say, hey, is this maybe exactly that? And do we need to tread cautiously? And do we need to also not be shy and just kind of have these loving conversations with other people to make them aware. Yes, in love. Make them aware.
Yeah.
And just like I did with my patient, it's look, I just want you to to be aware that this is the case. And if it changes something for you, then great. I'm glad you're aware now. If it doesn't, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you for it.
Yeah.
And go for it. I'm glad you're exercising. Let's think about that. Let's think of other ways that we could be exercising too, so we can still be championing what people are trying to do, which is be healthier.
Definitely.
But then let's not sneak in idol worship or sin at the same time, which is exactly the enemy's forte. And he's a master at it. So we don't need to feel bad about if we're duped, because a lot of us were, including myself, right? We're doing it not really knowing what we're doing. And that's what we just have to live a life very awake and intentional, thinking about everything. And it definitely has me thinking a lot more. I mean, I was listening to an ex-New Ager, and he was going through, all these different New Age practices that have really their root in Satanism. And then he brought up a Satanist website.
Yes.
And it went through all these different practices that it encouraged people who want to advance in Satanism to do. Yoga was on the list.
Literally a website called thejoyofsatan.org. And it talks about yoga on there.
Yes.
Like, that's crazy.
Yes. And then, but then it got me thinking, well, I want to see what else is on this list because I want to make sure that I don't have the veil over my eyes when it comes to something else.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? We need to be aware.
Yeah.
Right? And we know our enemy is. And so we need to be too.
Yeah. And a lot of times those yoga shops and stores, I imagine, have like crystals and things like that. You know, it's just like those deeper spiritual things that a lot of people don't even realize that a lot of those are horrible.
Yes.
You know, and I think we'll talk about that more later on because crystals, you know, the healing, the energy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about that too right now. Very popular, you know, very trendy.
And people don't realize that they're treading into witchcraft.
Yes.
And and so, we just need to help each other be aware, but be loving and not judgmental. And that's the only way we're going to help each other is by doing everything we do in love. Definitely. But shining light where light needs to go.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes me a little sad when I think about, you know, like the community aspect, because I think that so many people just want like a sisterhood and like something to do together. And I see that component a lot on Facebook and Instagram where they're getting together and doing their hot yoga sessions. And, you know, it's just like very popular, but it makes me sad. Because I think, like, you know, what could we do when we take something out? What can we replace it with? Talking about our gut lining. Yeah. But I see the same thing as this, too. It's like if you take yoga out, you know, what can you replace it with? And I do Pilates, but I also don't think that that's just, like, the pat answer because it has a lot of the same movements.
You have to be careful. A lot of them will mix yoga and Pilates together. Yeah. So, you do have to be careful. But ultimately, we have to think about what is it filling in my life? Am I always doing it by myself and I really just want to work out? Well, there's other ways to do that. Yeah. Or am I doing it because I love the community and it draws me and it keeps me going? Otherwise, I wouldn't exercise at all. Okay, well then we need to fill that gap. And so maybe you need to join a running group or whatever, you know, like we
gotta think of something that's like a little closer, you know, because I definitely would not want to run, you know?
For sure. But some people love, the spinning classes or there's other classes people could be doing, and maybe this would inspire people to start something else, right? Like I think that'd be so fun to have like a Christian exercising women's group where they just are getting together and doing that. Like I've dreamt about doing something like that where it's like show up at this place and we're going to be doing exercise together, a place where we don't have half naked people, you know what I mean, and just like all the craziness that can happen at a gym, and where we can champion one another, and it's actually like a very supportive environment, you know, like how healing could that be, you know, and we go for walks all the time where it's like, let's go for a walk and catch up, and so we can be, you know, sharing with each other, having that sense of community, but also getting exercise at the same time. So there are ways it can be done. Yeah, you know, definitely. So hopefully there's somebody out there who wants to start that. Right. We'll come join you. Yeah, exactly. So, well, do you feel like that kind of covers it? Yeah. Well, I hope that this episode was helpful, maybe got you thinking about some things. If you felt your blood pressure going up, well, maybe you need to take a look at yoga. Do some searching on your own. Take a look at some different websites and just look at it. And if you still feel like you're supposed to go ahead with it, we're not going to judge you. Yeah, absolutely. But you might find that it changes your mind. Yeah. And that was the goal, is just to shine some light on a topic that I think a lot of Christians are maybe just unaware and doing it, and it would maybe change if they were more aware of what they're doing. Yeah, so definitely. We pray that you be blessed and have an awesome week. Thank you so much for listening. We are so encouraged to just hear about people listening and getting a lot out of it. Let us know if these things have been helpful. That blesses us, and let us know other topics too that you want us to talk about. Have a blessed week.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today on Hearts for the Kingdom. If you could leave a review on our podcast, we would so appreciate it. And if you could subscribe, that way you'll get an update every week when we release our new episode. Also, visit us on social media and like us on Instagram and Facebook.